Oteil, 1986, and it took this long to do my own record. A lot of people don't know why. Basically, it's because I've just been playing with so many great people, you know, through that time that I always felt like I wanted to be a sideman. When I was real young, I had a band back in my hometown, and some of my best friends that I cared about a lot, they thought I was kind of rough as a band leader, and I couldn't be that guy. I wasn't good at being that guy that had to come down on people, you know, and say things to them like, you know, you need to shed this, you're not playing it right, or, you know, you're missing notes, or you were drunk last night, stuff like that. So I decided that instead of being a band leader, I would be the best sideman I could be. And so from that point on, I never wanted to be a band leader again, and that was when I was like only 19. So when I moved to Atlanta, it was 1986, met Jeff and Oteil, and then we started playing with Bruce, met Matt Mundy. That whole thing came along, and basically there was no real leader in that band. Oteil, you know, it's Bruce's band, but Oteil led us from tune to tune within the context of the music so brilliantly. And Jeff too, it was really Jeff's band. You know, he's the one who started it. He's the one who assembled the musicians and put it together and introduced us all to Bruce. And so it feels good to be doing a solo album, but I've never done it before, and this is my first time, and I've learned a lot. Scapegoat Blues is basically a tune that was born out of my love for blues, but also the diminished scale, in which the diminished scale, if you took certain notes out of it, you know, it's got the notes from certain notes of the blues scale in it. And, you know, they have a lot of common tones. And so I wanted to write a tune that kind of flirted with the line between playing blues and going into this other harmony, you know, with the diminished scale. So that's where that tune was coming from. And I thought about my friends Jeff and Oteil, who are quite well versed at going in and out of the harmony that way. And I thought, who better to play the tunes with than them? Only When It's Light was one of the first Kofi Burbridge songs I ever played. And I met Kofi Burbridge, Oteil Burbridge at the same time. I had been playing with Jeff Sipe at his place off 285, you know, the perimeter here in Atlanta, for about 3 or 4 days. We were barely getting to know each other. And he calls me up one day and he says, these two guys are moving into my house. The Burbridge brothers, they're incredible. You got to come over. So when I came, they moved in as roommates with Jeff Sipe. So I went over there and met Oteil and Kofi. Kofi had written these tunes in the 10th grade. Splash is also a composition by Kofi Burbridge that was written when he was in the 10th grade. He was a musical prodigy and is just, you know, his writing skills are just unbelievable. I played the Only When It's Light for the first time in 1986, and I always thought, what a great song, you know, what a great tune. But it never got on an album, and all the things Kofi's ever done, it just somehow never got recorded. So when I got ready to do this, I called him up and asked him if we could do Only When It's Light, and he was like, yes, let's put it on there. So I'm thrilled to have a couple of Kofi's tunes for this project. New Moon was a tune that came about from, you know, basically just taking a G major scale and mapping it out on the guitar neck and forming chord scales by looking, you know, like basically, you know, I've heard Alan Holdsworth talk about this. It's very simple, but it sounds complicated. But you just look at the look at the entire neck with the notes from that scale mapped all over the entire neck, and then you can look and connect 4 notes together, and then you can move each note up 1 chord tone, you know, and then connect those 4 notes together, then move up 1 more chord tone, and it forms what's known as chord scales. And that tune came about by finding some voicings within that were based out of the Phrygian mode that, you know, I found by doing those little, you know, chord scales, and it kind of, that's where the tune came from. That's where I found the 2 chords that are the basis of the song, you know, the opening 2 chords that keep repeating, you know, just by messing with chord scales. This is a tune that came about when, you know, it's very special to me. It's my father passed away, and you know, and it was just, you know, it was a rough time. It was kind of written in his honor and my mother's honor, and it's basically just a simple little chord progression that, you know, it kind of hopefully conveys a sense of loss, you know, but also strut is basically just a little funk tune that had been laying around. I hadn't finished it. I had a couple of little chords, you know, that kind of were kind of fun to play around with. And the Jungle Book overture I heard when I was a child, when I saw the movie Jungle Book. It's a Disney animated feature that was a Rudyard Kipling story. Mowgli, you know, everybody knows the story, and basically that opening piece, the overture, had been in my subconscious since I was a child, and a lot of years went by, and I always would think about it, you know, like someday I want to record that tune. And then I started getting into the melodic minor scale like years later when I first started learning about what that was, and the minor 6 chord, and understanding, trying to understand what it was about. And then, like years later, I heard that song again and realized that that's what it was. It was based out of that minor major tonality, and you know, it was very intriguing to me all over again. And I decided I'm going to record this tune. So Carolyn, my wife, bought me the CD for the soundtrack from the movie. So I got to listen to it and get the basic arrangement down, but I also wanted to hire other musicians to play on it and take solos through the form rather than, like, you know, the original has no solos through the form. It's just an overture. It really just introduces the story, and you know, but the melody is so profound, and it's got such a profound set of chord changes that it was just really intriguing to me. And you know, we finally put it down. Lost is a Wayne Shorter composition off an album called The Soothsayer, which Derek Trucks had given me, which I had heard the album, but I didn't own it, you know, but he, just one day out of nowhere, he gives me The Soothsayer, and I'm like, I've always loved this album, so I start listening to it again and again and again and again, and actually there's a bunch of tunes on that album I would love to cover. There's one called Angola that was going to be the one I was going to cover, but Derek started doing it with his band, and so I was like, okay, well, he's doing that with his band, so I'm not going to record that one. But then I was thinking about several of the tunes on that record are so, you know, I just love them. Wayne's if I had to pick one jazz composer, I would have to say he's my favorite. I hate to say favorite, but his tunes just speak directly to me. And that tune in particular just really grabbed me. And I thought, you know, the original had Freddie Hubbard playing the top part, and then James Spaulding, the alto sax player, playing the middle part, and then Wayne Shorter played the tenor part, the bottom part of the three people playing the head. And I thought, how cool would it be to maybe have Kofi play flute on top, and then Greg Osby play the middle, you know, alto part, and then I would play Wayne's part down low. And I thought, what a cool blend that might be. And we tried it, and that's, you know, that's where that came from. And I love Wayne Shorter, and I'm just, you know, a master. You know. Okay, Transients actually came from more of the same kind of thing New Moon came from, which was basically, you know, man, just had too much time on my hands and decided I would map out a scale and really look for chord voicings within that scale that I hadn't found before. And through doing some different chord scales, you know, I was able to find a couple of chord progressions that I really enjoyed. And you know, harmonic minor scale, basically doing chord scales on that helped me find a couple of parts of the progression. And the melodic minor scale, doing chord scales on that. And once I found the chords, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. So I would just, you know, recorded them and started practicing playing melodies over it, or trying to, you know, find out what worked against it, and it became a tune eventually. Is another, that's another one that's just really, really close to me. It's a simple little formula, chordally, you know, but it means it just has a vibe to it that, you know, it's also about my parents, basically. And it's really about a lot of things, but you know, the chord progression is basically a minor major 7 chord on, you know, going between like E minor major and C minor major. Then it goes into a predictable formula where it just goes down in whole steps until some other chords come around, and it's all based out of the melodic minor scale, but there's a new scale on every chord. And Flash was written by Kofi Burbridge, and he wrote that tune, like I said, when he was in the 10th grade. I didn't know him then. I didn't meet him till '86, but man, what a tune, you know. That tune actually ended up on an ARU record that we did called In a Perfect World after Bruce had left the band. But I remember we were making the record, and we'd finished all the tunes except Splash. And I can't remember why, but I had to leave town to go back to my parents' place in North Carolina for some reason. There was nothing serious, I don't think, but I had to go back to North Carolina, and while I was gone, they recorded Splash, okay? And I came back to play on the tune, and I heard what they had done, and I was like, I'm not touching this. What they did with it was absolutely incredible. And so it was Kofi and Jeff and Oteil. And Kofi had played piano and flute on it, so he overdubbed some flute, and it was just such a masterful composition, and it was so perfect the way they had done it, just with the 3 of them, that I was like, I'm not touching this, man, you know? So years later, here we are, I'm doing this record, and I'm looking for material, I'm thinking about material, and I loved that song so much, and I didn't play on it on the original, on that ARU record. I didn't play on that song. It was the only song on the record I didn't play on. So I thought, wow, it's been enough years to where I think it's okay to re-record it if Kofi's up for it. So I asked Kofi if he'd be into it, and I thought, you know, it'd be cool. We'll get Greg Osby to play on it, Jeff and Oteil and Kofi and Greg Osby, and I'll play on it this time, you know. And I love the tune. It's an amazing composition. It's like a big band tune, you know, and I'm really thrilled that Kofi was able to let us do it, you know. You know, we always called him Michael Jordan, you know. As long as I've known him, he's been superhuman. He's been able to pull off things that mere mortals just cannot do. And, you know, he's in a class by himself. A lot of people that know him from some of the things he's done over the past 10 years, you know, they haven't even really seen what this guy can do. This guy is just, you know, he is a stupefying musician. When I think about the bass players that, you know, that I would like to play with, there's so many great ones, but there's only one Oteil, and he's one of my best friends in the world. I love him, and I really just wanted to play with him. I want to play with him, and So that's why I was so thrilled that he could play on this album. And he brings, on any album he plays on, he brings so many things, I can't even list them all. You know, his time, his feel, it's all in a class by itself. So he brings a lot to the table. Jeff Sipe, you know, I've known since, you know, he was the first guy I really got to know when I moved to Atlanta in '86. And as soon as I heard him play, I was like, I made the right decision coming to Atlanta. If this is the way people play in Atlanta, this is the way the drummers play in Atlanta, I'm so glad I came to Atlanta, you know. And then I quickly found out that that's not the way the drummers in Atlanta play. It's just there's only one. There's one Jeff Sipe, and that's it. And there's nobody like Jeff Sipe. I've never seen anybody more dedicated to their craft. When he comes to play every time. Every gig, every studio session, he is just, he lives for music, and he is walking music, you know. I mean, he's living, breathing music. That's what he is. That's what he lives for. It's who he is. And he is, when I think about drummers that I would like to play with, I'm a very family-oriented kind of person, and you know, Jeff and Oteil, I've played with them starting around 1986, and you know, man, those two guys are still my first choice. Jeff and Oteil would be my first choice to play in any situation with any music. You know, I just love them so much. Bridge, you know, Kofi is one of the deepest musical minds that I've ever encountered, and of course he's been playing in Derek Trucks' band now for quite a few years. I met him a long time ago, known him forever, and completely just in awe of his harmonic mastery. You know, Kofi it's just so easy for him. You know, like he can play through jazz tunes. Like when the changes come, you don't hear like, you know, I mean, he's just so relaxed when he plays through the changes. It's like, and he can hit every change, but he's not thinking. You don't hear him thinking. He plays jazz like a lot of jam band people play over one chord. You know, like playing over one chord like I do, you know, with a lot of bands, you know, like we just hit D minor 7 and jam for a while. Well, Kofi can play giant steps with that same mentality. I mean, he's not thinking. It just rolls right off of him. And as a writer, the depth of his writing, it's astounding. And a lot of people don't know. A lot of people have heard him play with Derek, and they're starting to get what a genius he is, but his writing, man, you know, is where it's just so deep, you know, and his feel. And Oteil will tell you he learned everything he knows from his brother Kofi, you know. He'll tell you that. Jeff Sipe turned me on to Greg Osby several years ago, and he had these records, and we were in the van, and we were driving somewhere to play on the road. So I can't remember what group we were with, but he turned me on to Greg Osby, and I was completely bowled over by Greg Osby, and you know, several of his records, and just knocked out by his musicality and his incredible phrasing and his unique voice. You know, I mean, just like guitar, it's hard to have a unique voice on an instrument like guitar because, you know, so many people play the guitar. And all the music that's exploited the guitar, well, the saxophone is very similar to that because so many people have played the saxophone. I mean, think about it, you know, everybody's going to be, if you play alto, everyone's comparing you to Cannonball or Charlie Parker. Greg, you know, obviously has listened to these guys, but man, he's got his own voice. He's got his own unique thing. It knocked me over when I heard it, and I thought, this guy is a monster. Well, I was on the road with Phil Lesh, and, you know, we were talking, and like, what are you listening to right now? Someone asked Phil, what are you listening to? What's on your CD player right now? And Phil said, Greg Osby. And I went, what? Phil listens? And, you know, and I've been working with Phil for a year or more at this point. Sometime in early 2000 or 2001, and I was like, man, Phil, you're into Greg Osby? I'm into Greg Osby. You know, so we started talking about it, and then Phil had done an interview with Rolling Stone or something, and they asked him, maybe that's where they asked him, what's on your CD player right now? And he said Greg Osby. He said it in print in Rolling Stone. Well, Greg Osby got hip to that, so he wrote to Phil's website to thank him for mentioning his name, you know, in his interview. Well, Phil said, well, hey, man, you know, we're going to be in Philly. Why don't you come down and play with us? So I was thrilled because I got to meet Greg Osby. Well, when Greg came and played with us, we had this chemistry that, we both felt it. And I was scared to death, of course, you know, because I'm, you know, jazz musicians freak me out, you know. I mean, people that are that good, it can be very intimidating, you know. And because harmonically and rhythmically, these people are so advanced. And I feel like a Neanderthal around them, you know. So, but I was lucky because when we played together for the first time, the music's harmony was not that difficult to play. We were playing Grateful Dead songs and a lot of one-chord jams, you know, or two-chord jams or whatever. And so it wasn't that challenging harmonically to play over, and I felt kind of free, you know. I was able to do what I do without being too scared. And Osby jumped right in, and we were able to have an amazing conversation the first time we played together. Had a good musical conversation. Then at that point, I knew I got to work with this guy if he's interested. And he was interested, and we got to be